So our first ministry is Doug Juday. He actually, Doug's a Barnabas partner. Doug's working with a global impact. Doug's got a great story, 25 years working with Fidelity. Then he felt God lead him to make a not small change to work with Heart of Africa, working with women and children who've been suffering from AIDS and some of the other adversities in Africa, doing healthcare and wellness, economic empowerment, education, and more. And so for Doug, what travel used to look like for Fidelity was a few nights away staying in a hotel. Now with Heart, travel looks like a few weeks away in a rural village. And so that's not a small decision. Doug, we're really glad to have you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Caroline. Caroline is a single mother that is living with HIV in Kibera. Kibera is the largest slum in Africa, located in Nairobi, Kenya. As Caroline began to tell us her story, she started to say, before Heart, life was not easy. And for the next 10 to 15 minutes, she shared with me and the team of folks that I had at the Heart Center that day exactly what that meant. She had been separated from her husband. She was raising her twins and her older child alone. She had lost a child to HIV and was dealing with HIV herself. Her family had rejected and abandoned her once they found out she had HIV. She had no skills to get a job. And she told us how she would cry and cry because she knew she was going to die and leave her children all alone. As she began to tell that story, or she told us that story, you could feel a glimpse of the pain and the hopelessness that she must have felt. And the words just keep replaying in my mind. Life was not easy. I kept thinking about how much more those words meant to her as compared to what it meant to me those few times I might have said it to my friends and family along the way. Now, in Kenya today, HIV is no longer the pandemic that it used to be, but it is still an epidemic, with over 1.4 million people living with HIV, and prevalence rates as high as 20 to 25% in some of the hardest hit areas. Stigma, as you heard from Caroline's story, is real, unfortunately, and poverty in Kenya is very different than it is in the U.S., with the average income in Kibera, where Caroline lives, at $1 a day. Unemployment is exceptionally high, with rates as high as 60+% for the younger populations. And unfortunately, that's not going to get any better anytime soon, as 1 million people are entering the workforce every single year. That leaves some very difficult decisions for parents to make, decisions you and I don't have to make very often. Do I put food on the table, or do I pay for my kids' education? Although school is free in Kenya, these parents still have to pay for school uniforms, for school materials, for other school fees in the tune of hundreds of dollars a year, and therefore they have to make the hard decision to not send them to school. So you see the severe lack of education at certain levels as well. Now, 26 years ago, these problems were very much the same, and so a woman by the name of Vicki Winkler, a nurse from Auburn, California, decided to do something about it. So she started HEART, which stands for Health, Education, Africa Resource Team, in the year 2000. Now, Vicki and her husband had been living in Kenya since 1979. He was called to run a Bible college out there. And as HIV was kind of becoming bigger and bigger out there, Vicki, as a nurse, would get asked to come speak and talk to people and educate them about HIV, and even help women that were infected with HIV. Now, eventually, Vicki and her husband get called back to California so that he can pastor a church in Auburn. And Vicki cannot get Kenya out of her mind. Specifically, she can't get these people that were dying every single day out of her head, and the kids that were going to orphanages out of her mind. And so she eventually gets this vision from God that she can take care of these orphans, or prevent these orphans, if she can just take care of these mothers. Who better to care for these children than their own mother? So she starts HEART and starts traveling back and forth to Kenya with whoever she can bring with her. So the team in force. Now, eventually her husband, Ken, gets sick. He's given 6 months to live, and so they plan out the rest of her life over the next 6 months. He passes away, and within a couple months, Vicky moves full-time to Kenya to devote her life to the ministry. Now, teams early on were critical to the success of Heart. We couldn't have done it without people going out to see the work and help with the work. And obviously, there's a lot that you get out of these trips. People get to see the real need in places like Kenya, which is not in our backyard, obviously. We got help getting the work done. You cannot do it by yourselves, as people in the nonprofit world know. Lots of work, not a lot of hands to do it. But for those of you that have been on a short-term mission trip or a long-term one, you know these trips also impact your life pretty significantly. And that's actually my story. I was impacted on a trip with my church to Heart back in 2012. It changed the trajectory of my life forever, and so much so, I ended up leaving a 25-year, pretty successful career at Fidelity last year in January in order to come work for Heart. Contrary to the advice of my financial advising friends, take a big pay cut while you've got 4 kids in the family, 20 years old down to 4 years old. But teams have been critical to our success. There are literally hundreds of people in this area that have gone to help support our ministry, and we're so thankful for all of them, some of which are in this room today. Now, early on, Vicki was caring for these mothers predominantly, and our primary program is called WEEP, Women's Equality and Empowerment Program. This is an 18 to 24-month, very holistic program, really broken into 3 phases. First, we stabilize these mothers from a living situation perspective. Then we empower them through education, training, and most importantly, discipleship. And then we help them to thrive. So we teach them some business skills, how to set up a small business, and hopefully access to microfinancing, as it was talked about earlier, so that they can support their family and the way that they really want to. But with all of those other challenges we talked about in Kenya, Vicki realized, hey, if we're really going to break the cycle of poverty, we have to also come alongside some of these kids as well. And so you've got an education sponsorship program where we support school fees for the children of these weak mothers while they're getting healthy. We have a Next Gen program, which is geared for those young adults that weren't able to finish school, where we're trying to teach them some kind of vocational skill like welding and wood turning that they can hopefully turn into an income and be able to support themselves and their family. And then last, we have a program we call Freedom for Girls, where we provide menstrual hygiene kits to adolescent girls throughout Kenya. Many of these families cannot afford these materials for their children, and so you'll find girls in Kenya missing 3 to 5 days a month of school, which over the course of a year is a lot of school missed. And as you get to the older grades, you find less and less girls in those schools. So this program helps prevent that. There are a number of moments I'd love to share with you about Heart's history, but 2 in particular to the big question we'll ask you today. The first is in 2003 when Heart was blessed with a property to call our own. Vicki had been renting a house in Nairobi, and as teams would come, they very quickly realized this is not big enough for these teams, plus our staff to have a place to work. And so Vicki and a couple of the board members decided, hey, it's time for our own place. So they started to look around. Vicki had her mind set on a place she had heard about on the outskirts of Nairobi, but the board members wanted the place in Nairobi. But quickly they realized there is no way we can afford a place in Nairobi. So they relented and went and took a look at this spot on the outskirts of Nairobi. As they open the gates of the property, they see these 2 large hedges that have been trimmed in the shape of hearts. And Vicki immediately knows this is exactly the spot that God has in store for us. So to make a long story short, this property that was on sale at the time for $500,000, the 2 board members got it for $250,000, fully furnished, and then turned around and rented it to Heart for $1 a year until we were able to afford to pay them back for the property. So we were blessed with an amazing property that served as an income-producing vehicle for us to pour back into the ministry, but also office space for our staff when they're not out in the field working for women. And the property has 19 rooms. It houses up to 50 people a night. We have a conference room for businesses to come do meetings, an indoor nice dining room, as well as an outdoor patio, full kitchen, and it's in a very nice area of Nairobi with tons of amenities. So it's been such a blessing to us. The next event is related to our WEEP centers. You can see on the left here, the map, we have 7 different locations that we have WEEP centers, and all of those locations at the time were rented. We had a few donors that came together and decided to give us some money with the hopes of turning our upcountry office into a Nairobi lodge like we already had as an income-producing vehicle. Well, this was right before COVID, and as COVID hits, our for-profit lodge becomes a non-profit lodge, and so we quickly realized this may not be the best decision for us. So we did a lot of praying, we did a lot of talking with the donors, and decided, hey, let's purchase our own property to build our own WEEP centers. This got us out from underneath the rent. We were able to customize the space so that we could train these women the way that we needed to. We had more space to help more women, and now we actually had land to grow crops and things like that to provide food for the women. And as donors and teams went to see this property, they said, wow, that's really great. I'd like to help do the same. So now we have 4 properties of the 7 that we own outright. Want to come back to Carolyn. As you can see now, Carolyn is healthy. She is running her own business. She is supporting her family thanks to Heart. But Carolyn will tell you, with Heart, she got more than support. She gained a community. She now had women that she could walk alongside and understood exactly what she was going through, and were willing to walk alongside with her. We discovered she had a knack for tailoring, and so Heart sponsored her to go through a tailoring program and got a certificate. She now designs her own clothes and is actually training our WEEP mothers in the various centers. So she is absolutely a story of transformation and proof of what's possible when you believe in a woman like this. Now, before current state, women are overcoming obstacles. They are thriving. They're doing well. But we still have a lot of women that are unable to enter the official workforce and have an employer because most of them have never finished high school. And so we're finding these women starting small businesses, and they're surviving, but they're really unable to save. So they're kind of in a situation where a little health issue or something can put them in pretty dire circumstances. In addition, we now have gotten to the black since COVID in our lodge, so now we have profit, but it's still not nearly at full capacity. The summer months are full, but not as full the rest of the year. And so we find ourselves with these 2 realities: women working incredibly hard, but kind of stuck in survival mode, and an underutilized business asset that has real potential. And the 2 are not very meaningfully connected, which leads us to the big question for all of you today. How can we transform our lodge into a business engine that not only generates better income for Heart to pour back into the ministry, but also helps the mothers we serve build thriving, sustainable businesses or incomes of their own? Now, I know that question may not be the one you want to jump into, but for those of you interested, here are a few other ways you could get involved with Heart. Number 1, we'd love you to come to Kenya and see the work that we're doing. We'll make sure you get the real experience staying in the upcountry locations, but we may take you on a safari as well while you're there. 2, we definitely can leverage many of the skills and the expertises in the room. We'd love you to consider joining an advisory committee, maybe even consider joining the U.S. board at Heart. And then last, I know there's many small business owners in the room. For those of you that have a skill to not only do it, but also maybe train and talk to it, and maybe even think about how we might train our mothers to something like that, we'd love to talk to you. And if you have some ideas of creative job opportunities for these mothers and their students, we'd love to talk about that as well. So I look forward to talking to maybe a few of you later on in the group today. Thank you very much for the time.
Yes.
Doug, thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the leap of faith out of finance and into ministry. I'm Tiffany Leffler. I'm one of the Barnabas partners, and I get the privilege of praying over our presenting ministry leaders. And Doug, I don't think I realized how much our stories collide. My husband jumped out of Merrill Lynch and a full-time job in finance to launch microfinance loans in Haiti. And we're also an adopted family. So going on mission changes your life. Everyone in this room, if you haven't been overseas recently, I highly, incredibly recommend it. But this model, you have an asset, you have a lodge, you're wanting to turn that into more sustainable revenue. Have you seen other models either in Kenya, like uses of large buildings in that culture? Because obviously you want to be relevant in Kenya. Sending teams over is great, but are there other models of business that would utilize spaces like that in Kenya that fit that culture?
Utilize the lodge space or some of those other things. Yeah, I mean, I had the pleasure of joining an organization called Praxis. I don't know if you've heard of them. They had a conference in Nairobi, and what's really cool is there's a lot of amazing nonprofit leaders as well as for-profit business entrepreneurs that are trying to make a difference in the community. And so there are a lot of different ideas that were going around that room, trying to figure out how do we create more jobs? How do we get more of this kind of a space where we can train these people to be in a better position later on? But still haven't figured out a way to connect those dots.
All right, one more quick question. Of the women that you serve, I know you're kind of spread out through the country. Are many of them that you're serving near that lodge? Like, do they use that as a space that they visit?
Yeah, so the Weep Centers are really where they come most often, but we do see the women come to the lodge. Inside the lodge, we actually have a gift shop, and many of our women will make different things that our guests can come purchase in the gift shop. So the women locally in Nairobi do come. The ones up country, by the way, is left or right on that picture. Everything's up country if it's not Nairobi. They are not there as frequently, but they all want to come to Nairobi one of these days. So yeah, they thrive for that opportunity.